Welcome. Here's why management conversations keep pulling you into control. A team member asks for direction. You answer fast. The task moves, but the same questions return tomorrow and your calendar gets tighter. The hidden cost isn't time, it's ownership. Each quick answer quietly relocates thinking upward until you become the default decision maker. You're expected to be both the clarity source and the growth engine, but the more you control outcomes, the less people develop judgment. So here's the tension. How do you keep standards high and move fast without becoming the bottleneck that trains people to wait for you? When the same patterns repeat across teams and managers, it's not about personality or effort. It's a system effect. Leadership behavior shapes where thinking and responsibility naturally move. Control feels safe because it reduces uncertainty for the manager. But clarity does not come from control. It comes from making thinking, expectations, and ownership visible in the system. Every fast answer solves today's issue but trains tomorrow's dependency. Over time, decisions, judgment, and responsibility quietly drift upward to the manager. When thinking accumulates at the top, the manager becomes the bottleneck. Speed slows down, pressure increases, and the team waits instead of acting. Nothing disappears. Responsibility doesn't vanish. It simply relocates upward, leaving employees active but dependent and managers overloaded. Many managers rely on intention instead of structure. They listen, support, and try to help, but without a clear conversational logic, responsibility slips away and the same issues return. Pressure can trigger action, but it does not build ownership. People move faster, yet stop thinking. Over time, motivation drops because responsibility was never truly theirs. When urgency becomes permanent, reflection disappears. Conversations shrink, decisions escalate, and leaders react instead of shaping direction and responsibility. When autonomy is given without clear goals, boundaries, and expectations, people hesitate. What looks like freedom often becomes uncertainty and delay. When tasks replace goals, activity increases but direction weakens. People stay busy, yet responsibility slowly fades because success was never clearly defined. Without structure, conversations drift. Topics mix, emotions appear, decisions stay implicit. Everything feels discussed, yet nothing becomes owned or acted on. Thoughtful questions, frameworks, and techniques fail under pressure if the leadership position behind them is unclear. Sad. Without a stable position, managers revert to control. When the same issues return in different forms, it's not a motivation problem. It's a structural gap in how conversations are led. At this point, the pattern is clear. The problem is not people motivation or intent. It's how leadership conversations are designed and held. At a certain level of leadership, results stop depending on techniques and start depending on position. Position shapes how you enter a conversation, what you tolerate under pressure, and where responsibility lands. Without a stable position, you default to control. With it, you keep clarity, boundaries, and ownership in the room, even when time is tight and the stakes are real. That is the difference between temporary compliance and maturity. Management maturity is not about reacting faster or giving better answers. It is about holding a thinking structure when uncertainty appears. You set focus before you explore before you decide, and you close with explicit ownership. When that sequence is present, conversations stop drifting, escalation drops, and people leave with clarity instead of another open loop. The structure holds the process, not you. Coaching-based leadership works as a system, not a set of isolated skills. Position shapes dialogue. Dialogue shapes ownership. Ownership shapes culture. When one link breaks, usually under pressure, responsibility moves upward and managers become bottlenecks again. The course builds a single, repeatable logic that keeps the loop intact in real work, not in theory. It is how clarity replaces control without lowering standards. Many managers resist structure because it sounds rigid, but structure is what prevents control. It holds the flow of the conversation so you don't need to fill silence with advice or rescue decisions at the end. Focus reduces noise. Exploration builds judgment. Closing makes ownership explicit. With this discipline, you can develop people in short conversations without extra meetings. Flexibility stays, confusion leaves. Clarity is not about simplifying reality. It is about reducing cognitive load for everyone. When priorities are explicit, the mind stops guessing. People waste less energy on hidden expectations and more energy on decisions and follow-through. Clear focus also lowers emotional tension. It becomes easier to discuss impact, choices, and next steps without pressure or defensiveness. Clarity is the fastest way to protect ownership. Adult-to-adult communication is not a tone or style. It is a leadership choice about how responsibility is distributed. In this position, the manager does not rescue, correct, or parent. They hold the frame, ask for thinking, and treat the other person as capable. This is what makes clarity possible without pressure and accountability possible without control. Ownership cannot be transferred through motivation or instructions. The moment a manager decides instead of the employee, ownership shifts upward. Coaching-based leadership works differently. It protects the space where people think and decide for themselves. This is why responsibility does not need to be enforced. It stays where decisions are made, even under pressure and deadlines. Coaching leadership is not a mindset you switch on. It is a skill formed through repetition. The same structure applied in one-on-ones, check-ins, and problem conversations slowly retrains behavior. Over time, managers stop reacting automatically and start holding clarity by default. This is how structure becomes natural and conversations stop feeling forced or artificial. Leadership maturity shows in moments of restraint, when you know the answer but do not give it, when you see the solution but do not take it over. This is not passivity, it is discipline. By holding the structure instead of the outcome, leaders develop judgment in others and reduce dependency without lowering expectations or standards. Fast decisions feel productive, but they rarely change patterns. Depth works differently. When people think through situations themselves, they build judgment that transfers to future decisions. This is why coaching conversations may feel slower in the moment, yet save significant time later by preventing repeated issues and constant escalations. When conversations are structured, pressure becomes unnecessary. Managers no longer need to push, remind, or chase decisions. The structure itself keeps focus, pace, and accountability intact. This is how leadership becomes calmer and more predictable, even in demanding environments. Control is replaced by clarity, and results become a shared responsibility instead of a managerial burden. Most leadership problems are not solved by adding more tools. They are solved by replacing fragmentation with coherence. When managers rely on one clear conversation system, behavior becomes consistent across situations. This reduces confusion, builds trust, and allows teams to operate with less supervision and fewer repeated corrections. Sustainable leadership does not come from tight control or constant involvement. It comes from clarity applied consistently over time. When expectations, focus, and ownership are explicit, teams stabilize naturally. Fewer escalations appear, trust grows, and managers regain space to lead instead of constantly fixing outcomes. Coaching-based leadership is often misunderstood as soft or indirect. In reality, it requires more discipline, clarity, and restraint than directive control. It demands that leaders hold structure under pressure and resist the urge to take over. This maturity is what allows performance and development to coexist without constant tension. If you want to see how this logic turns into a clear, repeatable system for everyday leadership conversations, the full structure is explained step by step in the course. It is designed for real working conditions, limited time, and real accountability. The focus is not theory, but practical application in one-on-ones and daily decisions. You can explore the full system calmly and in depth. The link is in the description.